Hey there, super friends. It's Joey with Last Point Gaming. Today is still Tuesday, December 26th, 2017. If you want to connect with us on social media, you can friend up our Last Point Gaming Facebook account. You can follow us on Twitter at Last Point Gaming. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Stranger Sparrow. Or you can always reach out directly with an email to lastpointgaming@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to get the cast that way. And as always, you can DM me through any of these methods, though if you do it through the Facebook, maybe a while until I see it. If you're newer here with us, because we recently picked up a few new subscribers, Facebook makes it difficult to manage multiple Facebook accounts, whereas Twitter makes it really easy. So it takes me a while to get to the Facebook messages. All that being said, here we go. This morning I gave the F&M report, which, it was so bad. So bad. And one of the things that came up at F&M, I was talking to the captain, and apparently he has started sporadically listening to episodes here on the cast. And one thing he brought up that could be a thing that I go over is the removal of dual decks and the introduction of challenger decks. So, I am going to talk about that. So, over the years, now, bear in mind, I have kind of popped in and out of Magic. I started playing in, I think it was like 97, 98, somewhere in there, when Portal came out. I started playing the week after Portal released, because that's what we were waiting on. And then I played casually for most of high school. Got out for a couple years, jumped back in just for a tiny little bit around the Scourge set, got out again, and stayed out for a handful of years, actually, until it was at the very end of the Scars of Mirrodin block I came back, and I've been pretty actively playing since. I did miss the end of the Return to Ravnica block. Was that Dragon's Maze, and most of Theros. Did not do any of the Theros set pre-releases. I think Born of the Gods was already out when Scathe sent me a deck, and I had a month to play it until Return to Ravnica rotated out. And definitely been playing ever since then. So, I have some memory of the real old stuff, but again, if you've been with me for any length of time, my memory's not fantastic. But over the years, we've seen a lot of these pre-con products kind of come and go. A lot of supplemental products. Some things still keep going, Fatbacks got rebranded as bundle boxes, and I think the Deck Builders Toolkits are still out there, which those solved the problem that we had way back in the day of how the fuck do you get basic lands? Nobody wants to pay for basic lands, right? Well, one of the ways you got basic lands back in the day was to buy the box decks, but the box decks back then weren't a set card list. That's why, there's the exciting video on YouTube. By now, everybody's heard of it, and, spoiler, where the guy is opening, I want to say it was a revised starter deck, or unlimited, maybe beta. I don't remember, really. But he's opening a starter deck from way, way back, and, in it is a Black Lotus. So with the intro decks that they have now, you know the card list. So there is no excitement opening them like that, but you do know exactly what you're getting. I feel like back in the day, the starter decks, quote unquote, were semi-random. Like, they were certain colors, but they were like random cards of those colors. Now, I could be wrong about that. I could be way off. I really should look into it. I don't really remember much about them. I remember buying them, but I don't really remember much about them. I remember the Portal, Clash Pack my dad and I bought. I don't think that's what they were actually called. I think that's what I've always called them, but I think there was a different name for them. But it came with the two kind of welcome decks, I guess would be the equivalent now. Which, yeah, there's another pre-con thing available that you may not know about. If your LGS doesn't do the Magic open houses, you may not know about these welcome decks. Apparently, these have been a thing for a very long time, and I didn't even know they existed up until recently. And that was one of the how do you break into standard recommendations is you walk into your LGS and you say, hey, can I have one of the intro decks? Like one of these starter packs. But now we have the formal open house event, which comes with its own promos and everything, which I think is great. Actually, I think that is really fantastic. And it looks... Will you get the... Go! God! Slowest right-hand turn ever! Anyway. So I think these formal open house events are great. I know, I took Boo to one. That was her first delve into playing Magic anywhere but our kitchen table. And, she had a great time. Judge wasn't running it. I didn't run it. I want to say Dealer mostly took up the mantle there, and New Dodger. I don't think I've given him a name yet. He's the guy who took over after Dodger moved away and left the store. And in fact, for a fair amount of time, and I even still refer to him every now and again as New Dodger's actual name. They did a great job running it. Boo had a fantastic time. It's where she got really attached to the Shivan Dragon card. So, they're really bad decks. And you pick a color, and you get that color, and then a second color that's surprise. But, it was a fun event. I think there's promos involved and stuff now, and everything now. Definitely, if you, know friends that want to check out the game, and, you're trying to get to play, get them to go to one of these events. They're free. And you get this intro deck for free. Now, again, it's not a good deck. I would not roll into F&M with that deck. And they run a little kind of faux tournament. But yeah, I think it's a great event. Wow, you don't know the laws about how close you have to be to the curb when you park, do you? But yeah, we've seen a lot of these pre-con products come and go. Duel decks, I don't know, we haven't purchased too many of them. Let's see here. We have Speed versus Cunning, Elspeth versus Kiora, Blessed versus Cursed, Zendikar versus Eldrazi. I think are the four we've bought. Now, Speed and Cunning and Elspeth and Kiora, we bought strictly to have these, mediocre powered decks. Everything's on the same power level. And, we have not added or removed cards from them. And it's just something we keep around for, when Epidemic comes over, it's we don't feel like playing any of the board games we play. here we'll play some Magic, but we don't have to worry about, like, unequal power levels and everything else. Like, oh, well, you have your super old school deck, and I have my modern deck that I plan on taking to tournaments. You know, that everything's on about the same power level. Yeah, that's why we keep them around. We have made no changes to them. Blessed versus Curse we bought pretty much for Geist of St. Traft. Because that card was money for a while. And if I recall correctly, it was a really nice alternate art printing of Geist. But we have kept those decks together as well. We haven't even opened Zendikar versus Eldrazi. Yeah, they're fun things. I did want to pick up Goblins versus Merfolk. I just really haven't gotten around to it. But again, like, unfortunately, like, I don't even really play that much for funsies anymore. I pretty much play in F&M and, you know, events at the shop, but I don't play casually very much anymore. Mostly since Epidemic stopped playing with me. So we're getting rid of them. Okay, I don't know how many people really bought them. I did watch the professor's video on this today. I'm going to try to remember to link to it. It's a good video. He did go over, he went over some kind of important points that are things I kind of want to touch on, but I'm not going to go real deep into because, of course, he covered it. So I'm just going to refer you to him. But one of the major points he made throughout this entire video he did, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is WotC has a tendency to, like, okay, we're going to try this new thing we came up with. Oh, they didn't, like, fly off the fucking shelves. Fuck this. We're done. When really it would be helpful if they kind of tweaked. Like, get some customer feedback. You know, send out surveys or put up, you know, survey pages, and in the deck, these products, put a little page. It's like, hey, go here and fill out the survey about this product. Maybe a QR code to as an authentication token. I don't know. You know, something to prove that you actually bought the fucking thing, because unfortunately, when you're collecting data on the internet and you say, hey, come here and tell me about things, you will get a decent amount of people who have nothing better to do with their time than try to skew survey results. So, dual decks are going away. We're finishing on Elves versus Inventors, which not the pairing I would go with. I like Elves, don't get me wrong. I think being that the start of dual decks was Elves versus Goblins, I get what they're doing here. They like to kind of go full circle on a product before they say, okay, we're done. We will never do this again. Though again, if you go watch the professor's video, you'll see him point out the many instances of, oh, we're always going to do this. Oh, shit. We either ran out of creativity or it didn't fly, so never mind, we're not going to do this. We're never doing it again. Oh, wait, we're doing it again. Because, like, these challenger decks, they're calling them challenger decks as opposed to event decks, but it sounds like it's a very similar concept to the event deck, which they were like, fuck that, we're not doing that anymore. Now, let's talk about the event decks for a minute. I picked up 4 of the event deck that was out. I think it was part of, like, the Origins season. And the reason I bought 4 of them is at that time it was the cheapest way to get hangerback walkers, and each deck had 1. And the only other event deck I had purchased was, must have been Theros Indicons, because it had like Dictate of Erebos in it, and that's where I started getting on the plan of I'm going to punish people for killing my shit. They weren't great. Or it's like, oh, it's a 60 card deck with a 15 card sideboard, you know, sleeve this up, play it at your F&M. They are definitely a step up from the intro decks, 100%, totally agree. But as far as, well, you'll do well at F&M with them, not so much. So, apparently the article on it, which I did not read, I guess I should probably, you know, read this stuff before deciding I'm going to talk about it, but oh well. This one I'm going off of what the professor told me. You know, they said that they're going to be modeled after, you know, high tier decks and at least 2 mythics in the deck, plus some rares. This would be good. WotC claims to not care about the secondary market, but clearly they do. You can tell this by look at Iconic Masters. Okay, Mana Drain, yay! Horizon Canopy, awesome! Aether Vial, cool! We're gonna uptick the rarity on these things. Okay. Well, not Horizon Canopy, but Aether Vial, I guess, it's not an uptick on the rarity from its most recent printing, but I believe in Darksteel, Aether Vial was an uncommon. But we've made it a rare. What else was in there that was worth noting? I mean, Necropotence was, you know, good nostalgia card. But if you look at even all the master sets, the last one, MM17, was really good. It reprinted a lot of highly desired staples. Liliana the Veil, Snapcaster Mage. Was he in that one? I feel like he was in that one. Maybe not, though. Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf's been reprinted to oblivion by now and still somehow remains to be, you know, a highly expensive card. Because he's in, like, every fucking master set. Let's see here. What else was in there that was good? It seemed like there was so much. The fetch lands that we didn't get in cons. Which apparently they decided fetch lands were too broken for standard, which, after watching the Versus video today, they ran Teamer against Twin Blade. Now, I just missed the Twin Blade / Caw Blade era when I came back in. That was the original Zendikar block and Scars, I think. I think so. I'm fairly certain of that. And of course, I came in towards the end of the Scars block. And I think by then, cards had been banned and Twin Blade had been nullified. Now, if you look at the Twin Blade deck that Brad Nelson ran against Todd Stevens playing Teamer Energy, the powerhouse cards in that deck are in fact banned in Modern as well. Jace the Mind Sculptor and Splinter Twin. Oh, and Stoneforge Mystic. 3 cards that are banned in Modern were in that deck. So watching him with the fetch lands and remembering, I don't know, I thought the cons era was great, but fetch lands are pretty powerful, especially when we had fetch lands and what we call them battle lands, tango lands, whatever, comes into play, tapped unless you control 2 basics, but they were typed lands, so you could fetch them with fetch lands. So this allowed for the mana base for the 4-color Rally the Ancestors deck. 4-color Coco. You could run a mana base of 4 to 5 colors fairly easily. So, are they too broken for standard? I don't know. But in any case, what are you doing? You know, if you look at the master sets, you can tell that they are somewhat aware of the secondary market, and they kind of have to be. Like, that is the whole reason the reserve list popped up, was they overprinted, I think it was one set. It was the set where they kept the same set symbols for the older sets. Like, there's cards in it from the Dark that have the crescent moon. What the fuck was that set called? Was that Chronicles? I think that was Chronicles. And they overprinted it and completely devalued players' collections. And that, you know, almost killed the game and everything. The reserve list, I think, was a bad answer to a kind of misidentified problem, but we won't get into all that. So the reserve list is evidence that at one point, at least, they cared about the secondary market. So I don't think they completely don't care. So when they're like, yeah, it's going to have rares and mythics in it, and chances are they're going to be the bulk garbage rares and mythics, but it's still a step up from where we're at with pre-con product. The big thing they're going to need to do with these decks is if you're like, okay, so here's the Teamer Energy event deck. Now, we're going to strip some of the power out of it. Or, let's say Red-Green Pummeler. That is a viable deck. It's not a great deck, but it's very glass cannon-y. But you can do okay at an F&M with it. So they're either going to have to pick one of these like B-string decks and model after that, or they're going to pick one of these high-end decks, but they're going to strip out some of the power, which it's not a huge deal. It's like, well, here's Teamer Energy without the Scarab Gods. Okay, Scarab God is a really pricey card, but you get the rest of Teamer Energy right there. Okay. And Teamer Energy without Scarab God, there are cheaper things you can put in that slot, like how many started running Confiscation Coup in place of Scarab God because Scarab God got too expensive. The thing they're going to need to do, though, is the commons and uncommons in this deck, they're going to need to put play sets in. Because this is a problem we've had in pre-con product all throughout. Where it's like, well, I mean, it's really watered down. So there's 1s and 2s of everything. Like, no 4s other than basic lands. So the deck is completely inconsistent. Where it's like, well, you know, if you get off this specific draw, this deck's great. Unfortunately, you're only going to do that about 10% of the time. So they need to go for that consistency where it's like, okay, these are all commons and uncommons and a few rares. Not extremely high-end rares, but can you go 2 and 2 with this deck? Probably. You know, if you're a good pilot, or if you're learning, you know, this will at least help you learn some of the complex interactions and that kind of thing. The deck has potential. You're probably going to want to augment it. And yeah, I don't see a problem with decks that, you know, pre-con product that's like, okay, this will get you started, and then, you know, go 2 and 2 a couple weeks, work up a little credit, pick up a couple more powerful cards, drop some of the less powerful cards in this deck for, you know, better copies. Like, this is our budget solution. I mean, if they're smart, they'll, like, work with Seth from MTG Goldfish and be like, yo, Seth, budget decks. Because we don't want to hurt the market too much, but we want to give players an opportunity, because that is one of the big complaints about Saffron Olive's series on budget decks, is their budget decks right up until he streams them. And then people go, oh, wow, this deck's actually pretty good, and card prices jump because demand has jumped. If I'm not mistaken, Rami Red was originally, like, its original conception was one of his budget decks. And then people augmented it a little bit. But that's the deck that made Hazoret $30. Was his budget build. They need somebody like that on their team putting these deck lists together that can look through and say, okay, we're looking for something that's going to be lower end on card value, but still competitive. And the key to that is going to be more consistent draws by running 4-ofs of your commons and your uncommons. I can understand why they don't want to put 4 of, any given rare, even if it's a good rare for the deck. But again, historically, the problem we've always had with the Precon products is they are very inconsistent decks because it's a smattering of a bunch of shit instead of going really focused and saying, okay, they're commons. They're worthless anyway. Here's 4. They're uncommons. They're slightly better than worthless, but here's 4. So that's my thoughts on that. I'll probably talk more about that tomorrow in at least the first cast, maybe even the second. I don't know. This is something I really want to look at. I'm hoping they do it right this time and get that product that, when your friend rolls up to F&M with you for the first time and says, oh man, I just realized my deck's not standard legal, say, okay, we'll spend $20 on this. There you go. But that's all I got for today. As always, if you made it this far with me, thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.